See what this talking about, shot. When sounding a rapper gets you killed.
She does a song with Lil Uzi. Then a month later, she is assassinated while sitting in a car with another woman. Yes, assassinated. She was sitting in a Porsche when she got boxed in and two shooters hopped out with rifles. Now, I've heard that since her father was allegedly involved in the murder of young Dolph, that this may have been a motive. But I don't believe that. Not only because the killers were much younger and likely had no ties to Memphis, but Desto was also killed 9 hours away from Memphis in an attack that seems completely random. Almost as random as this weirdo signing her to his very mysterious XVI label, which is not even confirmed to be a label. It appears to be under Warner Chappelle Music, but someone tell me what I'm missing about this label. Now back to this bug-eyed motherfucker who I covered in my last video. He himself admits that it's
See, no. Free Dark, nigga. We not gonna be doing this today. We not doing this. Trap University. Chill the fuck out, Unc. Yo ass tripping, boy.
own cousin was killed just 2 days after signing to him, OTF Newski.
Newski signing his deal like
2 days before he got killed.
Yeah.
Who needs enemies when you have cousins, right? Being from Chicago, I remember when Newski was murdered. It happened 3 blocks from where I was living at the time. And due to it being Chicago and both of their names being connected to gang violence, it wasn't seen as suspicious. But then we have what appears to be a Facebook post. This was 2014, so excuse how weird it looks. But this is a woman who claims to have witnessed the entire thing. Again, I lived over here and used to frequent this area a lot. This was a very busy shopping plaza where it went down. There was a grocery store, 3 restaurants, 5 clothing stores, a bank, an AT&T store, a Walgreens, and an Army recruitment office, all packed into one corner, so there had to be dozens of witnesses. She said she told an officer on scene that Newski was still breathing.
If you don't know, bro, that's how everything looked, though. It's like everything. It'd be 16 stores in one, like 2 blocks.
AT&T store, a Walgreens, and an Army recruitment office, all packed into one corner, so there had to be dozens of witnesses. She said she told an officer on scene that Newski was still breathing. She must have been a nurse or somehow medically certified, because the officers on scene told her to do whatever she could to save him. And yes, it is very common in Chicago for the police to be there long before any paramedics arrive. But then, an officer from a department so unknown that literally living my whole life in Chicago, Illinois, I've never even heard of them until doing my research for this video. She says an AA officer interrupted her and told her not to touch the crime scene. When she argued that the man had a pulse and could be saved, an officer on scene begged that she be able to help him. But this AA officer threatened to provide her credentials and once again advised the woman not to touch him and that it didn't matter anyway. And it seemed credentials on scene not to touch them on my research for this video. She says an AA officer interrupted her and told her not to touch the crime scene. When she argued that the man had a pulse and could be saved, an officer on scene begged that she be able to help him. But this AA officer threatened to provide her credentials and once again advised the woman not to touch him and that it didn't matter anyway. And it seems that once these credentials were brought up, the police no longer had any say-so. An AA officer in Illinois is an officer of the Illinois Department of Human Services, the government agency in Illinois responsible for things like community care, substance abuse, disability, and child care for Illinois residents living in poverty. But in the midst of this back and forth between the woman and the officer, Newski's heart stopped, allegedly. How fucking weird. Now, an Illinois government agency is probably one of the shadiest organizations that you could possibly imagine. And if you don't know, Illinois is constantly ranked as one of the most corrupt states in the country, and Chicago, the home of most of these agencies, is consistently ranked the most corrupt city in the country. And yes, this story is obscure and hard to source, other than the initial reports that came out the week of the murder. But there would have been no reason I can think of to bring this random government agency into the story if it was a lie. Some things are just too specific, like a criminal describing their own crime scene with details only they could know. And not to mention, the main suspect in this murder was also ruled out. The police report states that the shooter was about 5'3" to 5'5" with dreads, but the streets pinned it all on a man with short hair standing about 6 feet tall. And not just the streets, his own friend, who himself will be mysteriously murdered, kinda pinned it on him. In an infamous live stream, he stated he was riding around with the killer on the scene, but he didn't want to be on camera.
I'm with the nigga that did. He don't want to be on camera though.
And this guy is heavily alluded to have been 051 Melly, a guy.
Now, folks, a good storyteller, bro. We damn near over with the video, and I didn't even know this shit was about Melly at all.
So notorious in Chicago that there are entire articles and hour-long documentaries about him, even though he never made a song or did anything besides have a vicious reputation in the streets. Now, the streets of Chicago have pinned a murder on the wrong guy before, but most of the time, it truly is common knowledge who the shooter is when a murder takes place, especially on the South Side. And two other things that didn't make any sense was that Lil Durk publicly announced that he was going to be in this location for a meet and greet, something highly unusual for a gang member with no security. Dropping your location only became known as a death sentence once it started happening in Chicago, so to say that he was unaware of this is nonsense. I mean, the biggest opponent to Lil Durk's wave during this time was literally killed hours after tweeting his own location back in 2012. The meet and greet took place in a no man's land or no one's hood, but this
Hey, that's some goofy ass shit. I never got why niggas be doing that shit, bro.
once it started happening in Chicago, so to say that he was unaware
Like,
of this
Lil B got smoked for 68 likes, my nigga. JoJo got smoked for 2,000 likes. These niggas is tweaking.
hours after tweeting his own location back in 2012.
He's
The meet and greet
smoked for
took place
money,
in a no man's land or no one's hood. This is still an incredibly stupid thing to announce and something no gang member in Chicago would ever do. Remember where people dying on live stream originated. I'm just trying to hammer in the point that there is no reason Lil Durk would have ever announced where he was going and when he was going to be there, especially when all of his most dangerous ops were still alive. And not only was this at the beginning of a deadly summer, but in just this week alone, 14 people were murdered in Chicago. And I'm not really going to cover what happens to artists that signed to Gucci Mane, because that's a whole video.
Yeah, that's a whole different story. I need to low-key tap into that. What's good with the 1017s? With the big brrs. What's good with them right now? I ain't gonna lie. I think they Fujiano lock, Pooh Shiesty lock. I think Pooh Shiesty coming home though. But I don't even think he signed what was that, Stunner for Vegas? He was 1017, right? Big Scar. Yeah, damn. I don't really know who else was 1017. Wasn't Flo Millie 1017 or some shit? I might be tweaking. I might be fraud just saying shit. I'm not gonna lie. But if it wasn't Flo Millie, it was somebody who looked like Flo Millie. But I thought she was on the 1017.
Video within itself. But Future signed a guy out of Chicago, I believe he was from the east side, named Freeband Trey Trey, who seemingly was barely ever mentioned by Future, despite the fact that he's only been dead for about a year and a half. Now, this guy was an active gang member, and if you check out the YouTube channel Ray Money Visions, a videographer out of Chicago, you'll see that just a year before his death, his video shoot was shot up, before eventually being killed in a shootout on the expressway. And in case you were wondering, this is also unsolved.
Yeah, that's usual. I'm not gonna lie.